This is the Fallible Ideas Discord chat, and the past couple days, and the Ratway is a new popper, so that's cool. So the Ratway says someone asked him, too much of popper relies on consensus, just has one go with the popular answers rather than being able to tell when a new idea is worthy of that. Describe popper in terms of how I understand him. In fact, a big theme of popper is like how bold conjectures can knowledge forward, sort of upend the previous understanding. Right, so like if you put forward a new model of physics, a new idea like relativity, and that involves criticism of you're sort of breaking the consensus, and Popper thinks that we're never going to hit an end to knowledge creation. There's always going to be to discover or think about or understand or integrate. Like we're not gonna be finished with science in a sort of totally final way. So, assuming that after some time people arrive at a consensus in some field, like there's a new idea, then people are gradually persuaded by it, and then there's that's the pattern of the new idea being introduced, which breaks the consensus, is something that's... So I think it's more like I don't think this reflects... I don't know, because it's hard to say, and I'm making general comments. This may apply to my own statements, but like when somebody's making a very broad, sweeping abstraction about somebody who to know where they're pulling it from. So, but anyway, let's see what the Ratway says. Not consensus, best explanation that is hard to vary, but passes our most stringent tests possible and survives all, including empirical observations. So Curie is saying, strictly alone, the issue is not to ignore some arguments and reasons. It's not about people. Also, an argument does not gain force by having more people who like it. This is a total tangent, and it's a very common, and I haven't thought it through very well, but I sort of don't... I know it's a very common expression, but something about force, like arguments having force, like just that expression bothers me. Because an argument has like an argument relies on reason, force are opposites. Now I know there's different kinds of force, but yeah, anyway. But there is something about actually, I'm going to belabor this a little bit. Because people do try and make arguments. There's a common thing where there's a structure of an argument, like if you accept this one very common, what was it? Right. So, argumentation ethics is was developed by an Austrian economics guy, and basically the argument very roughly runs that if you choose to enter into an argument with somebody as opposed to hitting them with a stick, then like an argument meaning like a discussion, not like loud angry argument, because argument has some, but yeah, just like a discussion, then a whole bunch of other, then there are presuppositions, or I should say there are implied ethical ideas from the choice to enter into an argument, from which a bunch of other stuff follows. And so then you can actually get the non-aggression principle from that and a whole bunch of other stuff. And the reason I bring this up is it's sort of trying to trap the person. It's if you're a person who accepts this theory, then it's a sort of rhetorical, where if they accept this very common thing, then you could say, aha, so therefore, and then say that because they accept the common thing, they have to agree with her. Now the thing is that ideas and arguments and statements and principles, they do have implications. So thinking through those implications is a worthwhile thing, and if you take a statement or idea or it can lead to stuff that you wouldn't expect. But there's a difference, I haven't thought it through too well, but there's a difference between saying do you accept this common thing, aha, then I win, because X, as a sort of rhetorical move or trap or whatever, and saying, versus saying, okay, do you accept this common thing, then do you accept this other thing? Do you see the contradiction there, or do you, or, like, for example, because it's good to concretize this stuff. Like, if you ask somebody, do you think self-sacrifice is good? They might say yes, because a lot of people have a worldview, sacrifice is good. But then you might follow up and say, okay, spend the absolute minimum you need to survive and, like, have clothes that protect you from the elements or whatever, and have a little hovel that you live in. The needy, people who are needier than you are, or whatever. And pretty much everybody will say, well, no. Now, if at that point you say, aha, so you accept at some level that you have to live for your own sake, and so you have to accept my objectivist philosophy, now I win, then that would be similar to this argumentation ethics stuff that I'm criticizing. But if you say instead, like if you actually engage with a dialogue with a person and say, well, it seems like you're putting something above the idea of self-sacrifice. What is that? Then that starts to become more of, I think, a persuasive type of situation where you're actually trying to see how the person thinks and maybe help them, as opposed to trying to put the football in the end zone on like a debate sort of mode. You're actually trying to figure out how the person is thinking about things and maybe help them learn something. So you're not trying to trap them. It's closer to using argument as like force or pressure other people. That's why I went off on the whole tangent. Arguments having force reminded me of this sort of trying to trap. Anyway, that was a long tangent. But figuring out the principle that separates forms of argumentation style that I don't like versus forms that I think are okay is so basically Curie is saying, moving away from this idea of being a consensus of people being a person we don't know who talked to the rat way, was characterizing Popper as relying on. And Curie is saying, no. The issue is not to ignore some arguments and reasons. Try to seek a harmony or consensus of ideas. Like, you have a bunch of ideas, you shouldn't be fighting. Because if you have ideas that are fighting, that's bad and leads to bad outcomes. Like, you feel bad. To incorporate the stuff I was just talking about. Say, on the one hand, you want an iPhone because you think iPhones are nice and you can listen to audiobooks and GPS for your car and all sorts of stuff, okay? And then on the other hand, you give the iPhone money, the money you would spend on the iPhone, to like the Orphan Cancer Kids Fund or whatever. Feel bad for the orphan cancer kids and your morality tells you that you should sacrifice. So, there's an active conflict about what to do with the money you can, and you have to sort that out. You can't just pick one. Then, say you pick the iPhone, then you'll feel kind of bad about not helping the orphan cancer kid. And like, maybe you'll forget about it after a while, but you'll still feel bad for some amount of time. And then, on the other hand, if you just give money to the orphan cancer kids, you might feel bad that you don't have an iPhone. So, and if you don't have a phone at all, you feel real bad. Phones are kind of important. So that's something where you can't just ignore the problem. Like, you need to sort that out. I think this is a good Curie statement. It's a sort of thing that, it's a strong, clear statement that lots of people, that I have no criticism of. So that's like a Curie statement. Those are the characteristics of it. The rat way, he's trying to say, maybe people do play a fundamental role in CR epistemology if they have a strong criticism of your idea. The criticism is an idea. Right. This leads me to another question. How can I tell if I understand something and not merely know it? I don't quite get the distinction. Because I would say, I think maybe I get the distinction he is trying to get at, but, because I wouldn't word it exactly in the same way if he has something else in mind. Because if you don't understand it, I would say you don't know it. So you might think you know it. So that's closer to what I'd say, I think. How can I tell if I understand something and not merely, I would say, think I know it? But maybe that's what he's getting at. So here he says, try to explain, apply, and use it, and look for ways to check test your knowledge. Compare with an answer key the right way. So in the case of Popperian epistemology, there is not an answer key available that I can think of. True. That is true. As I go along, I should attempt to explain what I understood and get those explanations criticized by experts. Yep. Oh, and then this other person. So I scroll down a little bit. And I liked Kiri's reply to this question. So, how do you predict or get better at predicting what your error rate is going to be as to be better at avoiding over? And up here, Elliot had said, overreaching is doing projects where your rate of making errors weighted by severity effort to fix exceeds your capacity for fixing it. That results in errors accumulating faster than they can. So the idea is like, if you can only fix one medium level error per hour, say, you shouldn't be doing projects where you're making like 2 medium level errors per hour. It's like if you're trying to write a program on a computer, but the state of your programming knowledge is such that you're like introducing more bugs than you can solve, then you're overreaching and you need to go back to more basic stuff and figure out how to do stuff correctly. Or another example is baking a pizza. So a lot of stuff can actually go wrong, because you also have to think about the stakes of the project. So I think I've gathered my thoughts here. So, because you could be learning stuff and then the errors are, like I've been trying to make better pizza at home, and lots of things can go wrong. You could burn the topping, get dough that comes out kind of crappy. You can get these dough bubbles that are kind of annoying. Fresh mozzarella, and you don't dry it out first, you can get a sort of watery soup on the top of your pizza. These are all things that have happened to me. Now, that's fine for me because I was learning how to do it. So for the context of learning projects, it's like, I don't know, when food comes out kind of bad, I just find it funny. Like, assuming it's bad in the sense, like, it's not the texture you want or whatever, not that, like, it's going to make you sick, but just, like, it looks wrong, it's off. It's just amusing, because I'm just making it for myself and trying to figure out how to do it better. So it's like, haha, oh well. Now, if I was trying to open the knowledge level that I had before working on my pizza making skills, that would be overreaching, because the customers would be coming in and, I'd be burned topping pizza or watery soup pizza or dough bubble pizza or whatever. And, like, yeah, maybe after a while it would even out, but then, like, there would already be nasty Yelp reviews and stuff, and so I'd have to get, like, new paint for the truck and call it something else. So it'd be a big mess. So that would be overreaching. I just wanted to, because I think I understand the idea generally, but I just wanted to tie it to a specific sort of example. So with that context, the Ratway had asked, how do you predict or get better at predicting what your error rate is going to be as to be better at avoiding overreaching? Curie says, if you have experience with both projects where you get overwhelmed, that's a typical way that overreaching feels, and projects where you have things under control and succeed, then you can make judgments about future projects. Is it planned out enough to know what to expect? Do you know the relevant skills fields enough? Do you have the resources needed, etc.? Most people are really used to being rushed all the time and glossing over lots of mistakes all the time. They are in a chronic state of overreaching, which they enjoy. So they know a new project will be like that, but they think that's normal, so they do it anyway. And I think this bit, it's a typical way that overreaching feels is important, is like people can be kind of oblivious to their overreaching, but then like other people lie to them, and so they never even, it's like a guy telling a hot girl, oh yeah, your cooking is really good, and it's just like terrible. So you can just be a little bubble where you don't realize you're overreaching, in a little bubble. Another thing to try is asking yourself, am I confident I'm doing this right? Would it be surprising to me if I made a mistake? Right, because people say, well, everybody makes mistakes. So they think mistakes are just ordinary course of living. Am I confident this paragraph I wrote is correct? Would a mistake surprise me? Well, no, the other thing is like, if you find a mistake, they'll just say it's like not an important one. It's like, oh, you're nitpicking, you're being pedantic. You should know what I mean. People often know they would be very surprised by a mistake being pointed out, and or know they aren't very confident. Those things indicate overreaching. If your goal is success, it's different if your goal is just to practice or try something out in an exploratory way. Like, high error rates are often caused by lack of resources. So Curie says you should have 50% extra resources for a project. You can have random variations without a cost.